Hi, you guys. Today's book chat is on the book The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman, Alexie. And it's actually coming to you from the upper deck of the Panther Arena. I'm going to give you a quick tour of what that space looks like. It's super awesome. I'll give you a more thorough tour after the end of the book chat. As you can see, I am overlooking the football field. I can see the weight room. And there's a snack bar behind me and a really spectacular basketball court kind of below me. And the reason I chose this spot to do this book chat is because one, it's one of the most quiet spaces on campus right now. This is still an active construction zone as school hasn't started yet. And also the main character, Junior, in this story plays basketball. So it seemed appropriate to be near our basketball court when doing the book chat. So let me tell you a little bit about The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. This is a story about a teenage boy named Junior, and when he says a part-time Indian, what he's talking about is that he is a Native American Indian living on a reservation, and that is so much of who he is and shapes his life in so many ways. So Sherman Alexie is best known for writing about his experience as a Native American Indian and the way in which that racial identity has kind of shaped limitations and has exposed him to all kinds of discrimination. And he writes a lot about the plight of Native Americans kind of through his own personal experiences. So the thing that I love about this book is that it deals with really deep, big themes like discrimination, like prejudice and the consequences of prejudice, the poverty that he experiences living on the reservation, the alcoholism, the depression, that are all kind of the result of generations and generations and generations of discriminatory politics and social practices. So he's talking about these really big, important themes, but he's talking about them in a super lighthearted way from the point of view of kind of a nerdy teenager who's kind of awkward and doesn't really fit in anywhere. And so that's kind of the magic of Sherman Alexie, is that he's talking about these really deep, heavy things, but his narrative voice and this absolutely true diary, the narrators that he creates to tell these stories are so fun that as you're like having this gut punch feeling because it's so awful what's going on, you're also kind of laughing hysterically because the narrator is able to do it in a way that's so ridiculous. And so I think that's the magic of this particular text and Sherman Alexie as a novelist. So I'm going to read you two passages from this text. The first part is from chapter, I don't know the number, but from a chapter titled Because Geometry is Not a Country Somewhere Near France. I was sitting in a freshman classroom at Wellpennant High School when Mr. P strolled in with a box full of geometry textbooks. And let me tell you, Mr. P is a weird looking dude. But no matter how weird he looks, the absolutely weirdest thing about Mr. P is that he sometimes forgets to come to school. Let me repeat that. Mr. P sometimes forgets to come to school. Yep, we have to send a kid down to the teacher's housing compound behind the school to wake Mr. P, who is always conking out in front of his TV. That's right, Mr. P sometimes teaches class in his pajamas. He's a weird old coot, but most of the kids dig him because he doesn't ask too much of us. I mean, how can you expect your students to work hard if you show up in your pajamas and slippers? Okay, you guys, so in this first day of his geometry class, I'm not reading to right now, obviously. In this first day, he opens up his geometry textbook. He's really excited to learn, but what he sees in the front cover is this book belongs to Agnes Adams, who is his mother. And in that moment, he realizes that this is the same book that they've been teaching with for over 30 years. And he is filled with so much disappointment and resentment and ultimately rage. And like a normal teenage student, that's not true, he reacts by picking up the textbook and throwing it across the room, and it, hits Mr. P in the face. So the next passage I'm going to read to you happens later on that evening when Mr. P comes to his house to have a conversation with him about this incident. So here goes. Do you know why you hit me with that book? Mr. P finally asked. It was a trick question. I knew I needed to answer correctly or he'd be mad. I hit you because I'm stupid. You're not stupid. Wrong answer. Shoot. I tried again. I didn't mean to hit you, I said. I was aiming for the wall. Were you really aiming for the wall? Dang it. He was like interrogating me. I was starting to get upset. No, I said, I wasn't aiming for anything really. Well, I was planning on hitting something, like the wall or a desk or the chalkboard. Something dead, not something alive. Alive like me or like a plant. Mr. P had 3 plants in his classroom. He talked to those green things more often than he talked to us. You do know that hitting a plant and hitting me are 2 different things, right? He asked. Yeah, I know. He smiled mysteriously. Adults are so good at smiling mysteriously. Do they go to college for that? I was getting more and more freaked out. What did he want? Mr. P, I don't mean to be rude or anything, but you're like freaking me out here. I mean, why are you here exactly? Well, I want you to know that hitting me with that book was probably the worst thing you've ever done. It doesn't matter what you intended to do. What happens is what you really did, and you broke an old man's nose. That's almost unforgivable. He was going to punish me now. He couldn't beat me up with his old man fists, but he could hurt me with his old man words. But I do forgive you, he said. No matter how much I don't want to, I have to forgive you. It's the only thing that keeps me from smacking you with an ugly stick. When I first started teaching here, that's what we did to the rowdy ones, We beat them. That's how we were taught to teach you. We were supposed to kill the Indian to save the child. You killed Indians? No, it's just a saying. I didn't literally kill Indians. We were supposed to make you give up being Indian. Your songs and stories and language and dancing, everything. We weren't trying to kill Indian people. We were trying to kill Indian culture. Man, at that second, I hated Mr. P hard. I wished I had a whole dang set of encyclopedias to throw at him. I can't apologize to everybody I hurt, Mr. P said, but I can apologize to you. It was so backward. I'd broken his nose, but he was trying to apologize to me. I hurt a lot of Indian kids when I was a young teacher, he said. I might have broken a few bones. All of a sudden, I realized he was confessing to me. It was a different time, Mr. P said. A bad time. Very bad. It was wrong. But I was young and stupid and full of ideas, just like you. Mr. P smiled. He smiled at me. There was a piece of lettuce stuck between his front teeth. Here's your picture of their little conversation. Junior is like, speak, my child. And Mr. P is like, it all started when I learned to walk. So that is the absolutely true diary of a part-time Indian. So hopefully you get this absolutely true diary part. He's talking to us in a super unfiltered way. We're hearing his kind of thoughts and ideas throughout the book. There's lots of stuff that's kind of shocking to hear and learn about. And then this part-time Indian, he is a Native American Indian on a reservation. After this moment, he decides to go to an all-white school to make that transition. So he ends up being only a part-time Indian. Half of his life he spends in an all-white school, and then the other half of the time he's in an Indian reservation. And so he refers to that as just being Indian part-time, which is another kind of complicated part of this story, is living in 2 worlds. Okay, so this book is, for those of you who want to know, this book is, I probably should have done this for you ahead of time, about 230 pages of really fun story and all kinds of great comic drawings. And hopefully you love this book as much as I do. Every time I read this book, there's more stuff that I find that I love. And every student who I've recommended this book to has really enjoyed reading it. So it's a fun ride, but that really makes you think about the life experiences of someone else. So for me, it was definitely getting to see into the life experience of someone who's lived a very different life than I have, and that's one of my favorite reasons to read a book. So I recommend this book for students who have kind of a dark sense of humor. A lot of the jokes that he makes, or a lot of the humorous stuff, is kind of ridiculous and raw and hard. And so for students who kind of have that same kind of dark or twisted sense of humor, this is a good book for you. For people who like to see the life experiences of someone who's lived kind of a different cultural experience than you have, and the way that culture has shaped their life experience, this is a good book for you. I think this is a good book for cartoonists because you can see the way cartoons are used to supplement the story. And they don't just represent what's happening in the story, but instead they like add a whole nother layer to what's happening in the story. And then I think this book is good generally for anyone who just likes a really good, fun story, who likes the serious kind of woven in with the funny. So like I promised, I am going to attempt to give you a slightly better tour of the Upstage Panther Arena. The lights just went off, so it's a little bit dark, but outside you'll see the stadium. Another book talk will give you more access. There are no hot dogs currently in the food court. There's some construction material, but I'm sure that will clear up here pretty quick. And then there's lots of fun seating area up top. And then as we move closer to the actual stadium, oh look, our lights are back on. You can see our Panther logo, and hopefully you're getting a really good aerial view of the court. And that's a wrap for Sherman Alexie's The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian book chat. See you later.